Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Barak Engel. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Thomas. How are you doing?
Really? Yeah, I'm good. Genuinely as well, my friend. One of the most entertaining pre-record chats I've had. You were hitting me with all sorts and it was funny, and I'm excited for the show, my friend.
Me too.
But yeah, for those of you that don't know you, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro. If I get any of this wrong, feel free to correct me, shout at me, or a bit of both. But I had a serious career. For everyone watching this, Barak's LinkedIn profile in the show notes, but hold multiple positions: CTO, head of security, CEO, multiple advisory roles over the years, and you're currently doing a lot of advisory work now, but so many different senior positions, some large logos as well, just to cover what you're up to now. And I know not everything is mentioned on here. So for everyone listening, this is only about half of what this man's up to, but I'll mention what's publicly available. So yeah, you're currently an advisory board member at clouddefense.ai. You're a founding member at TIA Institute. You're also a board member at Critical Threat Response Initiative. You're a strategic advisor for HackerOne. And you are the founder, CEO, and chief geek, and have been for just over 2 decades at Eammune. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. By the way, funny story about Eammune, and this happens when nerds try to do marketing. We were trying to come up with a DBA firm because when I founded it, I was broke, right? I was looking at every penny. And in the state of California, where I reside, if you found a business that has your first name, last name, you don't have to register a DBA, which is a doing business as, a concept that is, I don't know if it's in the UK. So you don't have to pay to register that DBA if you use your name. So the name of the firm officially is Engel and Associates, LLC. And when we were trying to come up with a DBA, once we started making a little bit of money, we picked the word Eammune, and then we were thinking immune from making silly decisions around security and security management, right? And then we're trying to think of how to be clever. And if you think of the word each, you're not pronouncing EH. And EA actually stands for Engel and Associates. That's the sort of Easter egg. But of course, everybody's trying to pronounce it Eammune. No, it's just immune. It's just the word immune, immunity. Yeah, don't let nerds do marketing, my friends. Ever.
Okay, cool. I feel like just chatting away to you, I feel like you've probably got quite a few stories about resilience. I'm imagining there's been, over the last 2 decades, it looks like things are pretty good now, but perhaps they haven't always been that way, and there's been some ups and downs along the way. And I think in these market conditions, to talk about how you've overcome different setbacks and stuff over the years and succeeded and got to where you got to today, it'll be good for the listeners, whether it's fellow founders that will be listening or whether it's folks that are on the market. So it'll be good fun. But I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I always think you can do it better than me. So who are you? What do you get up to? What's a day in the life like for you at the minute these days?
These days, what I'm going to say is it's important to note, when you own a business, especially for a long period of time, and Eammune has now been in operations for 23 years, there's no 100% ever. It's feast or famine, right? It's either you are sitting there wondering what the heck is going wrong, right? Have I lost my touch? Do people hate me? Have I developed some awful reputation somewhere? Is the market going away? Or after, sometimes it's months, right? Or you have a period where so much is coming in that you are not able to breathe at all. Now, if you take that and multiply this by the fact that I tend to keep myself busy because I don't like to sit idle no matter what it is, and as reflected in my LinkedIn profile, you can now imagine that all of this gets jumbled together. And what I was hoping is that one thing will offset the other, right? It's like you have a diversified portfolio of investments. No, my friend, that doesn't work that way. It's everything is feast or famine. So you take this and multiply this many times. And yeah, so typical day is simply, it's whatever English idiom you want to use, the chickens with their heads cut off and trying to herd them. I don't know. But
I'm imagining you just get more used to it as time goes on. Like, I bet most things that happen now, you've seen them before. You've probably seen them on multiple occasions. So I'm imagining you just get better at dealing with the madness.
Yeah, a little bit of background in that sense. I'm the person, the best of my knowledge. The caveat here is nobody's claimed otherwise. As far as I know, I am the person who originated the concept of the virtual or fractional CISO back in 2003. And by far the longest standing one in the world. For quite a few years, I was the only one doing this because people were like, what are you talking about? That's why my forehead is so flat, because I banged it against the wall for so many years. The blood spots are all over here. And you have to, because I was for a long time, even doing that, I used to be CISO for several companies at once. You have to get really good at context switching, right? Because you constantly have to switch context. And that is a massive skill that I ended up developing through choosing this career. And of course, that is scalable too. Now, humans cannot multitask. I know we love to say that we're good at multitasking, people who are really good at rapid context switching, but our human brain, is not structured that way. No human can actually legitimately do two tasks at once. And so what we're doing is we're rapidly switching between them, and you just become really good at context switching. And it seems like you're doing multiple things at once. You're just doing a whole bunch of things serially in little increments.
Yeah. Do you know what as well, though? You're so right about that being such a valuable skill set, because I know we've done a lot of recruitment in MSP and MSSP and advisory firms, and that ability to manage multiple clients simultaneously and be able to bounce between different environments and handle the client relationships as well as doing the technical work. Like, it really, obviously there is people out there that can do it, but I know from speaking to a lot of people, not everyone has that skill set, and it is a skill set. It's a real skill.
I share a story in one of my books. It's called The Security Hippie, right? And the story is what I call the Jessica Claus story, right? And this is a real thing that happened to me. This is when I hit my limit. Now, for those of you who are too young to know what the blue screen of death means, this is in the old days of Windows when the operating system crashed. It will give you this big blue screen with some mysterious code at the top. And basically, oh my goodness, my machine is screwed. The reason I bring this up is at the time, I was serving 6 companies simultaneously as CISO. Now, you never want to do that. I don't recommend anybody try to break that record, because now you don't even have one day a week to serve each one of your customers. I had a series of calls. It was a Monday afternoon that started at 1 and ended at 4:30, 30 minutes each across these multiple companies. And one of the interesting features of all this was that each one of these engagements involved a Jessica. For whatever reason, it just happened that way. And so by the time we got to the 7th call, the 4 to 4:30 slot, right? 2 minutes into the call, somebody made the innocent mistake, the catastrophic error of using the phrase, well, but Jessica said that. And my brain blue screened. I totally crashed. I'm like, wait, who am I talking to? What is this about? What's anybody's names? What are we doing? And I had to apologize on the call and say my brain crashed, and everybody laughed. I'm like, no, I'm serious, as I'm furiously trying to find the meeting invite to get context again about what I was doing. So I think that was the point where I hit my limit.
Okay, so 6 is too many. What's optimal, would you say?
For me right now, 0, but that's not going to happen until I retire. I can handle 3 really well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and that allows you to really maintain the quality and not completely burn yourself
my
out.
sanity.
Cool. I'm going to ask you about your name, because I couldn't get it out of you before we hit record, so I'm going to get it now. What does your name translate to in English?
If you translate my name from, which my first name is in Hebrew and my last name is in German, if you translate it back to English, you get Lightning Angel.
Oh, very good. What I know about you, it wouldn't have surprised me if you'd have named like your company after that or something like that.
No, instead it should have been Dumb Donkey. I get it, but Lightning Angel is what it really stands for.
Cool. You were talking about the feast and famine thing, and other business owners out there, I think, will really relate to that. And I think folks that are on the market will relate to just tough times in general. When you go through those tough times and I think it's really easy to look at a guy like you now and go, oh, it's all right for him, he's doing, and it probably is, but I'm sure you've gone through lots of tough times to get where you are. But when you're going through those tough times, is there anything that you do that gets you through them, or is there any kind of advice? I'm actually asking in a bit of a selfish way for me as well. What would you advise a guy like me to do when things do get hard?
Quit immediately. Go take a stable job somewhere. No, look, I think it takes particular kind of resilience or stubbornness, right? I used to say for a long time that my middle name is Pest. I think the thing that really has stood out to me, and this really dovetails with my entire career and really personal life and everything I do, and it was summarized beautifully by a fellow I met when in my last corporate job. My last corporate job back in 2002 was at WebEx Communications, and there was a CIO there, Jeff Tettleton, who I absolutely adored and was a great guy. And he said this really well one day when we were, I think it was lunch or something, we were just chatting. And he said, yeah, take care of the relationships and the details will take care of themselves, right? And the reality is that, at least in my experience, this has panned out beautifully. You take care of people, you treat people nicely. It's not about your product. It's not about the details of the service you give. It's not about whatever edge you supposedly have over your competition. So many people approach stuff as a black and white, win-lose kind of mentality and try to squeeze every dollar out of every transaction. At the end of the day, that can work for you short-term, or it can work for you long-term if you're backed by a lot of money and other people have to do the dirty work for you that you can then fire when things don't go well. But if you're there and you're essentially the product, which is true for my business. Yes, we are a company, we have 20 people in it, but at the end of the day, you do something like what I do, you inevitably, to survive for a long time, you become your own brand and you have to develop a reputation. In my business in particular, Eammune has never had a go-to-market function. We've never had sales. We've never had marketing. Our entire business is built on referral, which means it's purely reputation-based. And at the end of the day, the way you survive for that long, the way you do this is you take care of people, even in the famine stage, right? How many conversations have I had with people saying, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Is there anything you can toss my way? Because we've been working together for years. Occasionally, somebody will say, you know what, it like happened to me when I was going through, I went through a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I actually went through a personal bankruptcy in the '08 crash. And I was an innocent entrepreneur and a first-time serious business owner in many ways. And I had overexposed myself by taking personal debt to try to fund the growth of my consulting business. And when the spigots turned, they turned really fast back in that day. And I remember I had a conversation with one customer that, if you will, really saved my ass in terms of being able to pay my bills. I called him Mr. X in Security Hippie. There's a bit of a story about him there. I share this, but I went and I told him what was going on. And I was saying, I'm afraid you're going to fire me next. And if you do, what do I do then? I have nowhere to go. I don't want to end up under the bridge. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he basically looked at me and he said this amazing thing. He said, no, that's not going to happen. And in fact, even though they were cutting right and left, he said, I'm going to double your hours until you get back on your feet. And we'll figure out what you're going to do for us, right? And what an incredible kind gesture. And you talk about the worst of the worst moments in one's life in terms of one of the worst moments in one's life. Going through a bankruptcy is a very painful thing. And yet, suddenly somebody decided on their own volition to stand up and be that kind and that generous. Those are the kind of things are the lessons for me from all of this, which is freaking out not going to help you. You might do it anyway, especially if you're an anxiety-ridden person, like I think a lot of business owners are, especially me. But at the end of the day, it's the relationships that matter. It's the human relationships that you're building and maintaining and sustaining over time that really count. And I'm sorry, you can't stick knives in people's backs. You can't screw them. It doesn't matter what the short-term benefit is. Just don't. You do that, people will remember, and your reputation will suffer forever getting over that.
Yeah, especially in security. I've done this podcast and people have gone on my YouTube channel and gone, I went to school with him. I went to school. And it's like everyone knows everyone. You should be nice anyway, but I think there's even more of an incentive in security. But no, it's nice to each other. By the way, on the bankruptcy thing, you're in good company. I went through a bit of a phase of reading autobiographies at one point. And like I was reading Alan Sugar, Richard Branson, all these different businessmen that I looked up to. Every single one of them on a minimum of one occasion basically lost it all and got it all back. In fact, most of them had lost it and got it all back 2 or 3 times over. And I was like, wow, just must be the way it is.
I went to zero in 2009. I'm a multimillionaire now. That's not a bad outcome. I believe that I've done it without screwing people. I want to believe that. And that's really important for me. And I'm always very public about this. If you feel I've done you some harm, please come to me and tell me so I can remediate it if I can at all in any way. That's really important for me. So that's been my sauce, right? Everybody has different answers, but that's mine.
Yeah. So just not taking any shortcuts, no real silver bullet, just doing everything properly. And that story you said about that chap doubling your hours in tough times, that is the definition of relationships right there, isn't it?
You didn't have to do that. You talk about tough times. When I started this business, I had no asset. This was the dumbest way to start a business. But there's no financial reserves. There's nothing to lean back on. I left a job that in 2000, the last time I was there, paid me like about 180 grand a year. And the next year I made like the grand total of $1,200. You're really screwed when you go into a situation like this. And it got really hard. One of the ways I was using to promote myself early on was trying to offer free talks to various organizations in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I remember I did one. It was all about security for executives 101, right? This is like how you protect your stuff when you are a traveling executive. And I went and did one of those talks to a organization in the South Bay of people, directors and VPs, like HR directors and VPs. And the lady calls me, it was on a Thursday, and I knew that Friday, the next day I was going to get like a $500 check from somebody, which was like, great, that's going to take care of the bills. But that Thursday, basically we had nothing. And I got to the point where it was either I can pay for gas to go to do the thing or to pay for dinner, one or the other. There wasn't enough money to pay for both. Okay. And the lady calls me in the morning and we talk about the session. And I asked her, are you bringing any sandwiches in or whatever? And she, oh, yeah, of course. Give me your order. And I'm like, oh, yeah, here is my order. And I was so grateful because now I could pay for the gas and I had food.
Yeah. Do you think you need to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, yeah. I was so bad at selling because you're selling yourself. I mentioned that earlier. I spent the summer of either 04 or 05, I don't remember exactly which year, but in front of the mirror for about 6 weeks. I could stand it, which meant 3 seconds most days, but sometimes a little longer, selling myself to myself just to get over the discomfort. I swear I was grinding my teeth so hard, but after you do this for a little while, what happens is that the discomfort ebbs away and you become good at it, or at least reasonable or decent at it. And that really helped.
Yeah. I always find when you do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you do it and you do it well. And in my experience, nothing's ever as bad as you think it's going to be or as good as you think it's going to be. And if you do that thing that's hard, it puts you on a bit of a natural high after as well. You feel pretty good.
Yeah, although there's a lot of cliches around this that I don't necessarily agree with, right? There's this whole idea that you should work on your weaknesses in order to get generally better. And up to a point, it's true. If your weakness is harming you actively, then sure, improve it to the point where you're good enough where it's no longer causing harm. But otherwise, absolutely what you want to do is hone the edge of the thing you're best at. That's where you want to put most of your effort. But Eammune is a great example. I think I'm a terrible people manager. I don't want to be a people manager. I don't like it. I care about people too much to sometimes make tough decisions or be mean when you need to be mean. It's just not me. I don't want to do this. And so in 2012, I want to say, or 13, this incredible lady, her name is Rachel. She lives in London. So, you know, she's closer to you than to me. But she came on board and like literally the first conversation with her, she identified herself as a person who has the particular scar in her brain that says she enjoys managing people. Her dream is to be able to build the team and manage it the way she wants to do it, as opposed to some higher up in some corp. And I breathed such a massive sigh of relief. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Let's do this together. And we all report to you. So I report to Rachel as far as I'm concerned. Everybody does. She likes it. She does it well. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. It's perfect.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? You have the self-awareness to do that, though, which is quite a big thing.
That's interesting you bring it up. I know you like mentions of books. One of my favorites is a book called Awareness by an Indian Jesuit monk from the 1700s, I think, or something. I don't know how long ago he lived. Actually, maybe I'm totally missing on that. But his name is Anthony de Mello. And I highly recommend it to folks. It's such a good book about self-awareness.
Okay. It's a pattern I see with business owners that have done well, like having that level of self-awareness, because not everyone's got it, but it sounds like you definitely have. Just going back to what you said as well when you left your job. When you left your job on 180,000, that was 180,000 quite a while ago. So in relative terms, that was a lot more than 180. Like you were taking a big risk.
Oh, yeah. I had my reasons. I thought the company was doing a bunch of things that were not kosher to the point where I felt too dirty to stick around.
Okay.
It made me very uncomfortable. And one day this thing needs to be a screenplay, but it was under seal for a long time. And there was a bunch of 3-letter agencies involved, whatever. I don't want to get into all of that, but it was a choice. And unfortunately, if you recall, 2002 was scorched earth. Everything was burning in terms of the tech industry. This was the depth of the crisis after the bust, the dot-com bust. There were no jobs to be found. And I tried applying to get a barista position, right, at Starbucks and was declined for being overqualified. Like I couldn't get a job of any kind. I later learned that one of the reasons that happened, and it's not that I'm bitter about it, but it's one of those things where somebody does you a favor, even though they're really actively trying to harm you. What I learned many years later from a colleague, in fact, that same person I mentioned earlier, Jeff, shared with me that the day after I left, even though we both signed an NDA and a non-disparagement agreement, like we don't talk about each other, I left for family reasons, whatever it might be, because I held a lot of bad information about the company that I wasn't going to stand for. He apparently, the founder of that company, his name was Minju, right? And he called all his buddies in Silicon Valley, VCs, other CEOs, whatever it is, and told them not to hire me because apparently I was going to screw them or whatever it is. He really didn't like the fact that I had information I had. And I didn't know that. So I would get to the final stages of an interview and then I would get ghosted. And I didn't know why. So there you go. He gave me the gift of forcing me to become independent. And I'm so glad for that.
I genuinely believe that everything happens for a reason. And I think that happened for a reason because, like, the company would have never been born.
Resilience. It's all about what do you do when stuff goes bad.
Yeah, it is. I've said this before, I think, on a previous episode, but I'll say it again. Like one of my personal friends, he's one of the most successful friends I've got. And I can remember he just sat me down once and he just said, Tom, he said, if you can get over your losses quickly and just get on, he goes, you'll do pretty well in this life. And he gave us an example. His granddad owned a load of fast food franchise restaurants. He had loads and loads of, anyway, lost them all. And he just never got over it. And he just held a grudge forever. And he actually didn't end up ever recovering from that. And that kind of really stuck with me, that just getting over your losses quickly and you'll be fine. I was like, okay, cool.
The only kind of stuff that I always carry and hold a grudge on is against myself, right? Never others.
Yeah, cool. The fact you've never had a go-to-market function and everything's been done on referrals, which is amazing, by the way. But I've got to ask, because other founders would probably be annoyed with me if I didn't, is there like a methodology there, or is it just providing a phenomenal service, or is there any way that the referrals come in? Do you ask, or do they just come to you? Or
before I answer this, I want to be super clear about this. I hate top 10 lists. Top 10 things that you should do like Steve Jobs in order to become successful like Steve Jobs. What Steve Jobs did were the things that worked for Steve Jobs. It doesn't mean that you can translate them to the things you can do yourself. Definitely not copy them without understanding why contextually they worked for him. So each of us at the end of the day, we have to do the things that work for us. So for me, it's things that come naturally to me. I'm patient, right? And so, like I said, banging my head against the wall while I'm constantly adjusting and tweaking and asking questions and learning from my customers and developing relationships and doing this with the idea that it might take very many years before it really works comes naturally. I don't have a problem with that. If that doesn't fit your personality matrix, then it's not going to work for you. And so, great, I can tell you, be patient, be consistent, be persistent. Great, but some people, it just doesn't work for them that way, right? I love people. I know it's a horrible statement to make these days. Everybody hates people. I just love people. I enjoy people. So it's very easy for me to get to know people, and I enjoy their company genuinely. super transparent as a human being. I'm not guarded at all. There's nothing you can embarrass me with. I would be a terrible politician because the first day that I announce my campaign, I will call all the major news agencies and say, you don't even need to ask me. Let me tell you all terrible things in my past. It's not here it is. If that doesn't work for you as a human being, then it's not going to work for you. You're never going to come across genuinely as a transparent person. And that hurts because we people, all of us, are extremely good at picking up on, there's a misalignment between what this person says and what they really mean, for example. So if that doesn't work emotionally for you, it's going to get reflected and people will pick up on that and they'll suspect some sort of hidden motive. So you're going to have to pick a different way. I was doing something that felt like fun. I was always super transparent about it. I never thought, I can tell you, when I started doing this vCISO thing, actually it wasn't even CISO, it was virtual CSO, because the term CISO wasn't even popular. So it was Chief Security Officer back then. When I started doing this in 2003, I certainly did not imagine that it would become a career that would last me 23 years and going, right? You don't plan for that. I don't plan for that. I'm not a planner. I'm very on the dance on my feet, turn on a dime kind of person. I actually was sure that I was going to do things for as long as it needed to get a job. But then it ended up being that by the time people started offering me full-time jobs and saying, hey, why don't you convert from being like fractional to being full-time? There were always jobs that I would have taken 2 years before. It's the 2-year problem in my history, right? Oh, why didn't you come to me in 2005 when we're in 2007? No, it's not interesting enough. And it just builds its own momentum. Yeah, and the interesting thing, and this is replicatable, what I'm about to say is something that works, and I think is one of the problems that you have a lot of businesses, people give up too quickly. You've heard that probably many times. At the end of the day, if you build a business like I did, which has no investor money, it's always eaten what it's grown, and I'm very proud of that because we have a tech consulting farm with 20 people on it. We all eat what we grow in that farm. There's sort of a concentric circle concept, right? Because that's how you build reputation businesses, right? First is your first circle. It's the first line of clients, right? The first people that you have served for a few years. But it is natural for people to switch jobs, right? And at some point, 3, 4, 5 years in, sometimes it's 1, depends on how lucky you are. Some of these folks you've worked with are going to move to another place. And they might remember they enjoyed working with you in the previous place. So they'll invite you to come to the other place. Now you get the second concentric circle, right? And that grows. And a few years after that, you start getting the third concentric circle because now you have both the people that have gone from job 1 to job 2 to job 3, but you also have people that you've now met in that second circle because the ones from the first one invited you in, that they go to their second circle, right? And it becomes this like holistic effect. And it's sustainable. It really is, as long as you don't start treating people badly. As long as you keep treating people well. Screw the company. It's not about the company. People get obsessed about, oh my God, the cost of the engagement and the this and the that. Nobody cares about that. People just want to feel good about their daily interactions, right? Then they'll keep inviting you. And that's it. That's all it is. And now we've been doing this for so long. I've been doing this for so long. Unless I literally explicitly do a hard stop, I announce to the world there's no longer services to be acquired through me and my company, then we're going to be here for several more decades. It really is an incredible place to be, and I'm super grateful for it. But that's how it got there, right?
Yeah, it just compounds over time because you do it consistently. You look at it now and it's, whoa, but it's just step by step.
I've never done any financial projections, any sort of planning. I'll tell you, I'm also really good at delegating. Let's tell you Rachel's story, right? If there's something I don't want to do and there's something that's going to do it better, I don't need to look over their shoulder all the time and all that. If it doesn't work, I will find out and then we'll do a tweak. But I'm not too worried about preventing mistakes. This is true when I was raising my kids too. It's weird for a security person to say, but at the end of the day, I think there's this concept in security, cyber resilience, that's become bigger in the last few years. But I believe in this as a life concept, right? Which is the idea is not to try to prevent things from going bad. What you're trying to do is to prevent the damage or reduce the damage from things going bad, right? So if you need to allow mistakes to happen, that's how people learn. That's how organizations learn. This is part of the beauty of humanity, right? We learn from making mistakes. But if you can create an environment where the damage from a mistake is not catastrophic, then you can relax a bit. You can take a breath and say, okay, shit goes wrong. It goes wrong. Fine. We'll deal with it then. But if it doesn't go wrong, then I haven't spent an enormous amount of cycles, which people do. So many cycles, so much effort, so much money, so much energy and bad vibes, worrying about the things that can go wrong instead of doing the much happier thing. Isn't that a nicer way to live generally? And if things go wrong, make sure that you've built an environment that allows for it.
Yeah. You having that attitude as well, that will just be reflected in the culture as well, and it will help the culture into your moments as well as anyone. If people feel like they can make a mistake here or there, as long as it's not all the time and they learn from it, if that's cool.
I advertise my mistakes. Again, read Security Hippie, read Why CISOs Fail. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, this is a common problem in all of the stories that I always share. It's me.
Yeah, for everyone listening, I was doing a bit of a chat with Barak before we started. I said, yeah, don't worry, when we get this out, I said, I'll send you a preview. You were like, don't worry. Your reaction was unique. But yeah, like we said about you do a good job, people remember you. And you're right, as humans, we don't work on logic. We run on emotion, don't we? If it's how you make other people feel and if you make them feel good. And sometimes I'd say, it's not the price of the engagement. It's not this, it's not that. If they like you and you get on, my dad's retired now, but he used to go and work on power stations in the US, in Vegas, in the Middle East, and stuff like that. And apparently they used to say to him, look, you're not the best, but we really like it. So they always used to get him back. And that story always stuck with me. It goes on to relationships.
Look, I mentor a lot of folks. I see this as my way to pay forward because I've had incredible mentors in my life. Again, I mentioned one earlier, but I've had others. I've been very fortunate with mentors. And one of the things I will tell people, and some people can take it, some people can't, but think about it this way. Say that you are in a work environment or you're a consultant. Doesn't really matter, right? But the person you're primarily working for in any context likes you and considers you a friend. And then down the road, right, they have to make a choice of getting rid of you or somebody they do not like or consider a friend. Who do you think they're going to get rid of regardless of skill sets? So it's a self-preservation mechanism ultimately, but you can't make people like you. I don't like that word. That's not a thing you can do, right? You have to show up consistently, ideally as genuinely as possible. And then ultimately people develop trust. And human relationships are trust-based. Ultimately, that's what they are. And so if people trust that you are who you are, they're not afraid that you're going to suddenly pull a knife and stab them in the back. They might not necessarily agree with you and they like you, but if they trust you, then they're considering you as a little bit more than just the person they have to work with. And that's it. At the end of the day, secret. It's not a big secret. Everybody knows this. If you will, it's a lifestyle. It's the showing up consistently and genuinely. And that's it. That's all I can say on that matter.
It is. I think you're right, my friend. I think we do all know, but I think we all need it. Sometimes we need it reinforcing. And I know from experience, when that trust is there, it makes life so much easier as well. When you're trying to get results and get stuff done, if the trust is there, it's like, it makes work so enjoyable. It's nice.
I'll share another story that I share in one of my books, but it's a funny story, right? Because when I started, I made one of the most cardinal errors you can imagine. Starting in a security business, right? I hang my shingle. I'm going telling people how good I am at security and managing security. I had a laptop back in the day. I don't know if you even remember laptops from that era, but they had a physical switch where you could turn off the radios. And I was doing testing. Back in the day, I still thought I was good at technical stuff, right? And so I was doing some testing of a new worm, right? And I pulled my laptop up and I open up my sandbox and I turn off the radios and I click the switch off and I start running the worm and the thing suddenly on my screen, suddenly starts sending itself, replicating itself and sending it to, all the people in my address book. Now, I had the radios off. How is that possible? So I jump off. I was sitting on my couch. I jump off my couch and the laptop almost tears out of my hand and falls to the floor. And I realized that the switch caught on my shirt, so it didn't close. So I literally I just sent a copy of a pretty nasty Trojan, right, to all of my prospects. This was not a fun event, right? I ended up writing an email to all the people that got it. Thankfully, things were slower those days, so I managed to turn it off before it went up to too many people. I penned an email to about 100 bill folks or something like that saying, hey, I'm really sorry. Don't open this. This is what happened. And I screwed up. And I totally understand if you never want to talk to me again. I got 2 clients out of this event.
Okay, yeah.
Because appreciated. I was like, this is what I did. Talk about a life lesson. I'll never forget that. It's incredible, how people react to just you being upfront and being accountable and showing up, right? Rather than trying to hide.
Yeah, and admitting when you've made a mistake, because not everyone can do it. But yeah, cool. There's a lot of acronyms on your LinkedIn profile, most of which I understand, but there's one that I don't. And it's at the end, and it says PLP. So what does it mean?
I will tell you, but I want to ask, can you guess? Can you venture a guess?
Oh, do you know what I was thinking? The first thing that sprung to mind for some reason. I was thinking like DLP, data loss prevention.
Privacy loss prevention. Yeah, so people come up with all these weird things.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to tell you what it really stands for, and you're going to really appreciate it because you are British, and Rachel, that I mentioned earlier, is very British, and this is where it comes from, which is we had a meeting a decade or something ago where I went into one of my famous rants about security management, and they are famous. And at the end of my 5 or 10-minute rant, she sits back in her chair. I'm going to try and emulate this. She sits back in her chair, folds her arms, looks at me, and in the most Britishest of ways, you will understand, she looks at me and says, "You are such a pretty little princess." I loved it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes. And I've made it my title ever since, and it's on my LinkedIn, and that's what it stands for. I am the pretty little princess of Eammune.
Very good. Do you know what? Like everyone will be looking at it. They'll think it's like a security acronym, and no one will dare ask because they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know." Pretty little princess. Well, I'm glad we've cleared that up.
And she's absolutely right. That is exactly true. So
cool. I know you mentioned the context switching. I feel like that's such an important skill. I feel like in the advisory space, if you've got that skill combined with the technical, like you're really up there. If I'm listening and I know I can't handle multiple clients simultaneously, I know that I've got some improvements to be made there. I know that my context switching is bad. Is there anything you would say to me to make it better? Any tips you'd have for me?
Sure. But going back to the original P, which is patience and persistence. All of these are requirable skills. We can learn to context switch better. I don't care how smart you are. It's not about smarts. It's about practice. Practice, right? We all know this. Read all the real experts about human behavior and brain function and the way our neurochemistry operates in this organ that we have stuck between our ears. We know that this is how it works. So you want to develop better context switching capabilities, you have to practice it. How fast you're going to acquire the skill, each person is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. There's nothing special about any of this stuff. Yeah, sure, people win the lottery all the time, right? But think about what the odds are of all this. So there are situations where you get lucky. There's nothing wrong with luck. I love luck when it plays my way. I don't like it when it plays against me. You can say that during your life, luck evens out for most people, right? In a large scale, law of large numbers. Some people are going to be incredibly lucky. Most people don't realize that because of the amount of lotteries run around the world, it is practically guaranteed that one person will win the lottery twice every 7.5 years. They're probably going to feel like they're ordained. They're like some sort of, it's God-given. No, it's just the law of large number pretty much guarantees that because of the amounts of drawings, somebody's going to win the lottery twice, once every 7.5 years or so around the world. So at the same time, it pretty much guarantees you're going to have people, job from the well-known story around this, but at the end of the day, that are extremely unlucky. But we know how these distributions work. Ultimately, most of us will have luck even out through the time that we live. And neutralizing for that, because you can't control it, everything else it's a matter of sticking with something and getting good at it if you want to. And if you don't want to, then just don't even try it. If it's not important to you, if you're a researcher in a lab working on something really important, right? Just do that. You don't need to context switch. You're being paid to focus on that thing. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. One of the benefits of this pod is good self-development for me as well, because I can tell by the way, like, the way you speak about different things is, I was like, oh yeah, not everyone could do that. And you were like, no, they can. And it's almost like a mindset thing and getting into it. Like, I feel like you're really careful about what you say out loud or what you don't, because you said neurochemistry and stuff like that, like it affects the way your mindset and the way you're thinking is so important. If you tell yourself you can't do something enough times, you're right, you probably can't. If you tell yourself you can, you're also right, you probably can. And it's like, I'm getting that vibe off you, which is rich.
I also recognize, again, this makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially if they're religious, which I'm not. But at the end of the day, all humans are essentially hosting an alien species inside of us, right? We all are completely codependent with our microbiome, which is the bacteria that lives inside our body. It's not just in our gut, it's everywhere. It's our brain, the way it functions, right? Are we comfortable with that? That we perhaps our decisions are being made by a species we don't understand? They will trigger the various hormones that get released. I love this stuff because it tells me how small I am in the grand scheme of things, and that makes me so happy. And if you've read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the whole thing about have you read those books? Right?
No,
where Zaphod Beeblebrox, okay, I don't want to necessarily ruin it for you, but he goes into this machine that tells him that he's the most important person in the universe, but the machine is generally designed to show people just how microscopic they are in the context of the universe at large. And it's so important to remember, none of us are very important. I don't care what your name is. At the end of the day, Jeff Bezos, sorry, buddy, you're not that important. You're just another human like most of us. Yeah, you have certain skills and you've brought them to bear. And because of the way society is built these days, it created this world where you seem to be much, much more important than all the other people like you and me and everybody else. But at the end of the day, you're just another human. And another human that is impacted, that hosts an alien species inside of you like I do and like you do, Thomas. For humanity, you didn't ask me, but if you ask me how to fix humanity, it's like, Jesus, just have everybody recognize how small we all are in the grand scheme of things. A little bit of that humility will really help.
Yeah. Do you know what? Especially in the minute with the way that we could probably go off on a completely different or whole new podcast here, Vesh. I think especially the way the world's, and I've heard that being said before, like, almost like just that if something goes wrong, just like you say, get over yourself. You're not that important. I actually heard Kobe Bryant say that once on a motivational video. He's like, come on, get over yourself. You're not that important. Stuff happens. You're allowed to be annoyed. And maybe the afternoon or maybe that day. But after that, you've got to get back up in the morning and get on it. And a good attitude to have.
Try to stay conscious of, can't control your actions sometimes because emotions can be powerful. Security is an industry that I come from, right? Is an industry that's based on fear. And it's why it's so easy to sell security tools. Right? Because everybody's afraid of it. Nobody really understands it, but they all know they need it. And for a marketer, that's a gold mine, especially a marketer that has billions of dollars of marketing dollars behind them, right? Great industry if you're a marketer or a salesperson. So fear is a big motivator. And you know what? If you push somebody against the corner, they're going to react. If you make somebody afraid, or especially if they're afraid for their whatever causes them to think that, right or wrong, objectively, if they're fearing for their life or their physical well-being or their emotional or whatever it might be, they're going to react very negatively. And then people are, oh, look at you. You reacted so negatively. You are such a bad person. No, they were reacting because they're human and they're reacting the way humans are. But at the end of the day, literally, we're all hairless apes flying on a magic rock in space. That's what we all are, right? Yeah. There's no difference between me and you and the terrorists that, it's just we're all people at the end of the day. We're all part of the same species. I have this amazing hope. I won't get to see it, but that humanity ultimately is going to get to the idea that all humans are basically humans and we are one species. And that's probably going to take a few more thousand years when we evolve to that stage.
Yeah, I think we're in a fairly divisive world at the minute, aren't we, mate?
We're making progress. We really are. It's the whole 1.1 steps forward, 1.09 steps back over many thousands of years.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you, the final question I asked, which you mentioned, is I normally ask you which book you recommend. You've already given us, you've given us Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and you've given us the one on self-awareness as well.
Oh, books that have impact. First of all, I get to do this, right? My novel. Yes. The Crack in the Crystal. Read Very this good. One. This is really cool, and it has some really interesting philosophical twist at the end. If you go read reviews of this book, they confirm that. I get to advertise it here, right? But books, I've read so many books in my life. I'm an atheist agnostic, but I was so interested in religion in many ways, right? Because what causes people to do this? So like when I was growing up as a teenager, at some point I read back to back, I read the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran just to get a sense of how these things all interact with each other. I was very fascinated by all this. So they had an impact on my worldview because when you take away all the symbology and the fantasy, and they do share a lot of insights about humans and about human behavior. More recently, Blink, very famous book, Malcolm Gladwell, the whole thin slicing thing. Oh my goodness, that was a revelation for me. I loved reading that book because it makes so much sense. Yes, this is how this works. Thank you, sir, for putting it in such an easily digestible form. I can go on and on. I've read perhaps 2,000 books in my life. So many of them have had such an impact.
Cool. Listen, you've given us plenty of recommendations and we'll stick them in the show notes. And it's just been a flowing chat. I probably didn't ask you anything that I thought I was going to ask you, but it's been nice. It's been good. An hour's gone quick. And yeah, genuinely, I feel like this is like the universe sometimes, but like different things you've said and different things, like it's come at a good time for me as well. Because like just a few things you've said about patience and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, do you know what? Like I needed to hear that today. So thank you as well from me, buddy. It's been good.
First of all, you're welcome, but thank you. You've given me a gift by saying that, so I really, truly appreciate it. And I really enjoyed the chat. You're fun. I'm happy to come back if you want to do another one.
Yeah, no, definitely. We could easily chat for another hour. But no, thanks, my friend. It's been good.
It's been a real pleasure.